So it looks like most people are here. I will introduce myself. My name is Wendy Mitchell. I'm a contributing editor at Screen International. A very big welcome and thank you for joining us at Sarajevo's CineLink. We're very proud that Screen International is a media partner of the festival and CineLink this year and able to do so much great stuff online. You don't even have to travel to Sarajevo to get the benefit of Sarajevo this year. You are tuning in to the Unorthodox case study. So if that's not what you meant to join, you can, quietly leave the room. But I think you're going to be here for this because what an amazing show. Such an amazing response to it. We're delighted we can do a bit of a deep dive about the making of the show with Henning Kamm, who is a producer and MD at Real Film in Berlin. He's joining us from Germany. He's a very experienced producer. Before Real Film, he also worked at Germany's Detail Film. For everybody out there, I'm sure you probably saw, Unorthodox has been nominated for 8 Emmys. Then one of the most talked about shows of 2020. Just a phenomenal piece of work. If you haven't watched it yet, Netflix, not now, after this, you can watch it on Netflix. Just to let you know, today's talk will last about an hour. So thanks for giving us an hour of your weekend, first of all. It's going to be archived later on some of Screen's channels. We'll cover some highlights of the talk in text tomorrow at Screen Daily. Those of you joining us, I see some people are saying hello in the chat. That's absolutely fine. But if you want to ask a question, please use that Q&A button down below. My colleague from Screen, Ben Dalton, is helping me sort of curate the Q&A section. And you don't have to wait till the end. We can take some questions throughout as they're relevant. So, welcome, no further ado, welcome to Henning. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Wendy. Thank you very much for having me.
Gosh, there's so much to talk about with Unorthodox. And, I personally love this show. I sort of respect it as an industry achievement as well. Can you tell us about the origins of Unorthodox and especially your origins with it? When did it sort of cross your desk? Did it start at your desk? When did you get involved?
It was a Sunday, actually, just like today. I was in a dinosaur park not too far from where I live with my son, and I was on the playground. And he was playing around, and I was the dad who pulled out his phone. And I got an email by Anna Wenger. We didn't know each other before. I knew, obviously, who she was from Deutschland. And she was looking for a producer. Her agent had recommended she should reach out to me. So I immediately replied. 2 days later, we met. And I actually didn't know about the book, to be honest. And so she told me she was looking for a producer. She was working on a new show that Netflix was interested in. I didn't know the book. She said a couple of lines about it, but I quickly actually interrupted her because it matched an experience that I made. I used to have a girlfriend in New York. And at the time, I couldn't really stay with her because of a roommate. Anyhow, so I was always renting out rooms with various people, and that was pre-Airbnb times. So it went through Craigslist, which is like an online listing service. And so I booked this room with a guy, and I arrived that day in Williamsburg in a Hasidic neighborhood, which I was familiar with because I'd been there a couple of times. My girlfriend was living around the corner, and I get to this guy's place and I ring the bell. And he opens up, super nice, super friendly. He's like, "How do you like the neighborhood?" It was one of the first things he said. And I said, "Well, it's really fascinating. I mean, I can sort of understand Yiddish. I love the bakery shops and I love talking to the people." And he said, "Well, actually, I used to be one of them." So he was an ex-Hasid who then, like 5 minutes after I got there, he told me his whole story. And to be honest, I don't really have a good memory, but there's some experience that just stick with you, and that stuck with me. And so as soon as Anna started telling the story of the book, I was like, oh my God, I met someone. So I told her the story, and that's basically, I guess, that we clicked right there, right then. And that was in September 2018.
Wow. It's really cool that you had a sort of personal way into the story, but also, why did you think it was going to be a project, or did you know that it was going to be a story that appealed universally? Did you think it had those right ingredients?
At the time, it just felt like a great story. I wasn't really, I knew that it was kind of like a universal story in a way, but it's not that, you know, that we mapped it out and said, you know, there are these elements, and so it's going to be huge. We just knew that it was a very intense and great dramatic story to be told. And together with someone like Anna Winger, it was, and ideally for Netflix at the time, you know, it was really kind of like, yeah, you know, I really, really want to do this because all the ingredients combined just seem like a really, really good package. Yeah.
And, you know, did you ever ask Anna, how did Anna come to ask you? You know, she's probably worked with other producers before. She just picked you out of a hat or heard about your reputation, or?
Yeah, again, her agent recommended her to reach out to me. As you said, you know, I was running detail film. I found a detail film with my former company partner, Fabian Gasmier, 2007. And we've been working internationally, co-producing art house feature films. So I have an international art house background, but I've switched jobs and I left my own company and to become managing director at Realfilm Berlin, which is a production company, or the Berlin production outfit of Studio Hamburg, one of Germany's biggest production companies. And what we do is mostly German language TV. So basically the polar opposite of what I'd done before. I've been doing for the last 3.5 years. So I think it was a really good match, kind of since I had let's say the sensitivity of an art house background, combined with now for 3.5 years the industrial kind of like experience of producing German language TV. I think that was the best fit, and hence Unorthodox to me really is kind of it really unites my past with my present, and is something that I would like to do much more in the future. That it really hits kind of like the sweet spot of everything, you know. It's a TV show, or it's a show for a streamer, so it's definitely different to an art house feature film. But then again, you know, working with Maria, which we're probably going to get to later on, and all these and all the talents involved, it really was a very, very interesting mix. Very interesting mix.
I'm already looking at the Q&A box, and I'm really glad I am, because it gives me an excuse. Vikas Sharma is out. He's saying it's a phenomenally fantastic show. Yes, I agree. And he's asking what the budget was. And because Vikas has asked this, I was going to be that rude moderator who was going to skirt around me. But can you tell us the budget?
Obviously, you know, no, I can't.
Okay.
But just let me tell you, it was done.
Yeah.
But it was done on a European budget, that I can say.
Yeah.
You know, it's not as if we had kind of like 3-4 million per episode. Certainly not. You know, it was done on a European budget. The budget was okay, you know, but we did a contemporary costume drama. So, but it's, yeah, the budget was okay. We were on a European budget, which was fine, I guess, compared to all the other shows that we're competing with at the Emmys, or that, for example, our costume designer is competing with the other costume designers. Kind of like her budget was obviously a fraction of what many others had. So it was okay. I mean, you know, restrictions are good in a way. You know, it's sometimes they can be better than having endless resources. You know, it really focuses you. I guess there's just it just adds a bit of a touch of magic in a way. It can, at least. And I think here it did. The pressure really helped.
Yeah. I'm loving this audience already. Maria Ibrahimova. Sorry, Maria, I've slaughtered your name. She's wondering, it's going to be my next question, is how was the financing put together? And she's wondering, was it fully financed by Netflix?
Yeah. All rights deal.
Okay.
It's an all rights deal. It's a Netflix original show.
Okay.
So all rights deal. It's like and since we only had 4 episodes, so let me just quickly touch on this, because I'm sure the question is going to come up anyways. So in September 2018, I met Anna. It took a while. The deal was negotiated in the US by UTA, so it took a while until like everything was really set up. So basically in November, late November, I think 18, when we basically had the green light. Netflix would have liked to have episode, I'm sure. But and I said, well, since we already had a delivery date at that moment, and it was January 20th, 2020, so it was basically 14 months later. If you do the reverse engineering, we knew, okay, we got to start production or shooting beginning mid-May. That was clear. And then you reverse and you're like, okay, so we only have basically 5 months to write. Obviously, the writing continued even when we were shooting to some extent, but still we had very little time, and we had the book and we had 3 pages, and that was that. So so Anna and Alexa jumped right into it, but we were only able to do 4 episodes, and that kept us from accessing other German funds, kind of like the German Motion Picture Fund, which one condition is that you have 6 episodes. That's why the financing was very simple. All of it came from Netflix.
Okay, and I mean, you mentioned sort of the timing was one reason it was going to be 4 parts, but sort of for storytelling purposes, because we don't really see many 4-parters right now.
It's
and
true.
Why did this story work in 4 parts, do you think?
I don't know. Anna and Alexa made it work. They just made it incredibly work. And I think, again, it's one of those things, we had time restrictions, which led us to 4 episodes. And I think the show benefited from it. It became its own thing. And I think 4 episodes, it gives enough breadth to kind of deep dive. But then again, it's short enough to kind of keep the dynamics, So it's a very very interesting format, and I've been thinking a couple times about the format for the shows that I'm working on now, and 4 episodes every now and then really seems like a good fit. The only downside is obviously that you can't access certain financing, which is really a bummer, because I think in the current content overload that people experience, I think that obviously one advantage that we had, our completion rate is quite high, which means that who turns in finishes the show. It's above average, and I think that's because it's only 4 episodes. People they tune in and they know that they're not, it's not going to take them 2 weeks to watch the whole thing. But it is like an extended feature, but with an episodic structure, so you can just you can just binge the whole thing, or you stop after 2 or after 1 or after 3 episodes. So it really helped, I think, also the show to gain traction in the way it did, together with the whole COVID situation, obviously.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember being sort of excited when I started watching it, like, oh, it's only 4 parts, like I'm going to do this week, But before I was going to talk to you today, I was sort of rewatching some bits, and I was like, how is that only 4 parts? Because it looms in my head as like an 8-part thing that I was really in there with her and her life. And so it's kind of a great place.
It's incredible. It's Anna's incredible and Alexa's incredible storytelling. I had questions before whether the whole whether the storytelling evolved in the editing, but actually we were very close, very close to the script and editing. So the whole flashback, the different times that the show is told in, they were already interwoven in the scripts, and I think that obviously gives you kind of just lets you have a different view on things, and lets you experience different shades, and so I think it becomes much broader and bigger than it actually is.
And how hands-on was Netflix? I mean, were they going through all the scripts line by line? No.
Of course. And I never believed that Netflix needs a lot of money, a lot of freedom. I mean, from a German point of view, if you work for a broadcaster and you do commissioned work, they have great influence into what you're doing based on their metrics that they have, where they're saying, well, we know who the audience is. Whereas the system that we here have in Germany is kind of like 5,000 households, and that is measured, and that's just kind of so it's not really precise. Now think Netflix, all the data that they have, plus the ability to analyze that data and to correlate and to do whatever, So I think it's such a treasure to work with them, because they know exactly. I mean, there's highly skilled people, super professional, extremely qualified people working there. And so it obviously, I mean, you're not doing it for them, you're doing it with them, you're doing it with Netflix. So they're involved in the scripts, they're involved in the editing, but also in every other aspect. I've never had so many post-production meetings in my life before going into production with something. And for those of you who've seen the show, you know that there's very little VFX, or it's not post-production heavy, you know. But they give you so much support in whatever way, whatever question you might have, be it related to the camera, be it related to animation, be it related to the music, whatever it is. There's somebody at Netflix you can talk to, and you can play ball with and go back and forth to find the best possible option. You know, when it comes to editing, whatever system you're using, 2 editors, 3 editors, 1 assistant, 2 assistant, they just have so much experience and they're sharing all of it. So so it's very hands-on. It's very, very hands-on, and it's quite, you're not used to this. So obviously, you know, we're talking 2 different systems coming together. So there is a steep learning curve on both ends, and obviously it's not always easy. I mean, that's clear, but there's just so much to be learned. Yeah, just the other day, I found myself writing an email, as I would have done last year, to our partners at Netflix for whatever specific, you know, there was something that I learned about working with Netflix that I now adapted to a situation that I had right now, which completely benefited me because I got what I wanted, and it really felt like, reminds me of last year. So they're very hands-on, and it can get too much at times because you're like, wow, I know how to do this, but then again, it just helps. It simply helps. So
were there any decisions or changes they sort of pushed for that you didn't initially agree with, or, you know, could you push back? I guess like any other relationship, you can stand your ground on some things.
Nothing that I could pinpoint right now. Nothing that I could pinpoint right now. Really, I mean, nothing that really stands out, you know. It's obviously you have different opinions about some stuff, but no, really, I mean, no.
And what were you dealing with Netflix in Germany, or was it the European headquarters in Amsterdam, or was it Netflix US?
Rachel Eckbein was the creative partner at Netflix, and she was, Rachel is still based, I think, out of Amsterdam. So by the time they didn't have a kind of like a team based out of Germany, and they only set it up last year, I think. So everybody we talked to was based out of Amsterdam. Yeah.
And had Anna already pitched it to them when you came on board, or did you?
Yeah, they were already in talks when she reached out to me. They've been looking at, as I understood, Rachel and Anna had been looking to work on something for a while, and then the book came along, and so then the conversation started.
Yeah, because some people are asking already, like, how do you pitch Netflix? And I think it helps if you're the, you know, creator of Deutschland 83.
Of course,
you know, they
talent is absolutely key. I mean, talent is super key. Everything, but how do you pitch to them? I mean, reach out to them. They're very approachable, just like anybody else, and just like anybody else, you know. And some people like a three pages pitch, others prefer a pilot. I mean, it's I couldn't even you know, say what makes sense. I just think that you need to know why you pitch it to Netflix, and that's all that matters.
Let's get off Netflix for a second, where we're picking on them or something. I'm just curious, we wanted to talk more about this creative team that was assembled. So obviously Anna was the one who brought it to you. But then did you guys, you and Anna both hire Maria Schrader to direct together? And then when did Alexa come on board as a co-writer as well?
Alexa was already on board, and Anna had thought of Maria. They've been working very closely on Deutschland, obviously, where she's the star, and Maria had been directing a couple of features that were successful, and she had a certain proximity to the Jewish culture, through the films that she's made. And so she was, I think she was and she's a force of nature. So I think she was a clear first choice, you know, to pick. And so we took it from there. She wasn't signed yet, you know, but it was pretty clear that we would go for her, because looking at Germany and directors, she really, I mean, she was pretty much the perfect fit, I would say, you know, for the story, from everything that needed to be done. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and her sort of sensibility worked well with Anna and Alexa, I guess, or it did eventually, or?
I guess that, oh yeah, it did, obviously, you know, you can tell. I mean, yeah. I mean, they were very close before. So, so even though this was a huge challenge for everybody involved, but especially Maria, because the setup was so different. I mean, you had Anna as a creative captain, you know, the one person that has kind of like the last say. And we had a much more industrialized way of shooting. And so the whole setup was very different to doing kind of like an auteur film. Which was, I think, a major challenge for her, but that she mastered gratefully, you know, with her energy that she has. Yeah. Again, you don't get to a point like Unorthodox if there's not discussions along the way. You know, you don't. You just don't. You just need to. Obviously, there's long discussions about certain things, how things should go. You know. And then eventually you get to the point where it makes the most sense. So was it conflict free? No production is, yeah. But was it extremely ridden with conflict? Not at all. No. It was a very intense, short period of production, and so the amplitudes were quite high, but nothing, it was just very intense. Yeah. But the result is great. So.
Yes, it is. And another key piece of this puzzle, obviously, is Shira Haas, who plays Esty. Mm-hmm. And where, you know, had you seen her work before personally, or where did you guys find her? And...
No, through Esther Kling. We knew that we knew quite quickly that we needed to cast in Israel, and I found Esther Kling that Maria had already worked with, and they were actually close friends. And Esther brought us Shira. Shira did an e-casting first, and when we saw the e-casting, we already thought, we might have our Esty. We really think we might have our Esty, but we kind of managed our expectations because we knew that we would be doing a live casting in Tel Aviv in March. And I still remember the moment when I came to the casting studio and I knocked on the door, and first Amit opened the door because he just left casting, or a Yankee.
Yeah.
He just said quickly hi. And then I knocked on the door upstairs and Sheila opened the door, and there was this tiny girl standing in front of me, but her huge personality kind of like filled the whole room behind her. I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget that moment. And the casting was really interesting. We casted them, both of them, together again the next day, and it was a really interesting process. The last take was just the one that we said, let's do one more, and then we did the last take, and and we knew, oh my God, we probably have found both of them. But it was really Esther Kling. She is an amazing casting director. If you ever get to work with her, if you just try to work with Esther Kling, he's like a brilliant casting director. It's really, the casting was a very interesting process because we casted, you know, also in the UK with Vicky Thompson and Cornelia and Maria here in Germany, and everybody kind of pitched in, you know. We did a very spontaneous casting in January, the first time we went on a trip to New York on a recce. We decided, after we went to the Yiddish Spiel, to the Yiddish theater that Eddie Rosen and David Mandelbaum and so forth were playing at, after we'd seen Waiting for Godot in Yiddish, which was on the schedule the night that I arrived. I arrived on a Sunday afternoon in New York, and I knew that at night I would be waiting for Godot in Yiddish. And I was like, oh my God, please somebody pinch me if I fall asleep. Not that I want to be rude, but I'm just so tired from the flight.
That's
It
not
was
a good one to
such a
start on jet lag, I think. That's
no,
not fair.
but it was, listen, it was just, I was sitting on the edge of my seat for the first half. And then came the break. And then Alexa showed me her phone where it said that Teitelbaum, which is the Rabbi dynasty, the Satmar Rabbi dynasty, that one of his grandsons was having his wedding, which means kind of like a royal wedding going on right now. So we left the theater, Maria, Alexa, and me, and we went to Williamsburg. Found out where the men were having their celebrations, and found out where the women had their celebrations. And we went there, and it was just a fascinating experience just to look at it. It was just the perfect recce for that hour wedding scene that we had in the show, because Alexa and Maria, they went into the place where the women were celebrating, and it was very open. Like, obviously we couldn't go into the men's hall because they had all their garms on, but a lot of these observations ended up being in our wedding scene, actually. That fun fact that we shot in a Palestinian wedding hall in Wedding, which is a part of Berlin. That's where we shot the ultra-Orthodox Jewish wedding. It was
wow,
very nice. Yeah.
No, well, my next question was going to be how did you sort of get to this authentic point? Well, I'm an outsider. I don't know all the Hasidic customs, but I learned things by watching this, and it does seem authentic. Obviously, there's sort of recce's like being a wedding crasher. Not quite. I guess you had to be outside, and there's the source book, of course.
Yes.
Did you work with consultants, or? Yeah,
we had one very special person on our team, Ellie Rosen, who has left the community as well a couple of years ago, who wore many hats. He was the rabbi of our production. He's not only the rabbi in the show, but he's also our translator. He was the Yiddish coach for all the actors, and obviously the cultural consultants for all heads of departments. So for costume and whatever it was, he was our key person, and he was just such a treasure. He still is. But he was just such a treasure for the show, because we knew that we just wanted to make sure that we didn't make a stupid mistake which would give people the opportunity to kind of tear the whole show apart just based on a stupid detail that we just didn't get right for whatever reason. Interestingly enough, because we had a couple of people that had left the community on our team, be it in the cast or surrounding, and listening, Jeff Wilbush, for example, who plays Moshe, he has also a Hasidic background, so he's also made the journey. It was interesting to listen to both Ellie and Jeff discussing about certain aspects, because they had two different opinions. So on some things. So it was clear to us that there's not this one way, but you need to understand, that there are differences, but you can choose between 2, 3, or 4 options. There would always be evidence to back it up, but we just wanted to make sure just to be true, and because we knew that, and it was important to us, this is an individual story. We're not telling a story about the community. We're telling a story about a girl from that community. It's her individual story. So we don't allow ourselves to make a comment on that Satmar community. We just don't. And so since this is so important to us, we just didn't want to make any mistakes and then give people the opportunity just to tear into the whole show for basically the wrong reasons.
Yeah. And it was always going to be fine to shoot in Yiddish, or was there anybody who ever suggested shoot it in English with accents, or?
No. It was, that's what it needed to be. There's no other, never, there's just no, oh my God, that would have been so horrible. Yeah, it would have been just terrible to no, we never even thought of that.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that nobody suggested that.
Yeah.
And so was it sort of 95% shot in Berlin, or how much were
Yeah,
there pickup
yeah,
exteriors
we
in
had,
New York, or how did that work?
yeah, we shot 45 days in Berlin. So basically all the interiors, even though New York interiors were shot in Berlin. So the young Shapiro's apartment, like all the apartments were shot inside. The piano teachers loft was shot in Berlin. So 45 days in Berlin
Oh,
and 5 days in New York. But the 5 days in New York were really, compared to what we had um, as a support system in Berlin, where we were like kind of like a big production. In New York, it was quite the opposite. We were. I mean, everything went well, but it was very, very low key. Let's put it that way. It was very low key, just to get everything done. You know, we did guerrilla shoots when Esti's walking around the streets. We shot out of a van with an extremely small crew because we knew that you know it's not really cherished to shoot there. I mean, the community doesn't really like people to shoot, and especially if they understand that we're shooting something that is set within the community, it gets even more sketchy. So yeah, we were very, very low key, 5 days.
and was the crew mostly German, or a mix of German, US, or who was on the crew?
It was so, I mean, in the US it was mostly American, obviously, because it's so difficult to get working visa for a German crew, because you need a very, very good reason, many good reasons why that particular person needs to come with you to New York. You know, they want to make sure that you hire American crew. So in New York, it was just a very, very core team that was German. Everybody else was American. As in Germany, we had a very mixed crew. You know, we had Wolfgang Thaler from Austria, our DOP, genius DOP, who brought, which is so beautiful. It was one of the first things that he asked. He was like, "Hey, are you fine with me bringing my students as my assistants?" And I said, "Not at all. I mean, you know, you're such an accomplished DOP, and if you always work like that, I mean, it's your decision. I'm sure that if you trust them, then they'll do a great job." And I think it's I mean, what a wonderful thing as a student to be able to not only have a teacher like Wolfgang, who teaches in Vienna cinematography, where Michael Haneke is teaching directing, but then him offering his students to come along and work on projects like Unorthodox. I mean, yeah, Angelika, one of them, his first assistant, camera assistant, she did B-roll, you know, and so it was such a wonderful way to work with. So we had people from Vienna. Our first AD came from Vienna. We had Justine Seymour, a British costume designer based out of LA, that crossed our path through her daughter, who suggested her mom to Anna Winger. But you never know how it is, you know. You just, hey, I know somebody who could. She turned out to be just, oh God, such a. We got so extremely lucky with that woman, and so there was some magic about it, you know, how you know, who we picked and who came along, and so it was a very quite diverse team, I would say. It was good. It was really good.
And I'm curious what the most challenging scene was to shoot. If I had to guess, I'm going to say the wedding.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit of, I mean, I watched obviously, for people who haven't watched it, there's a making of sort of short doc on Netflix about the making of the show. And they talk about the hats and all that. But yeah, can you tell us, I mean.
Yes, that was definitely the most challenging. Yeah, the most challenging part was obviously the wedding. It was the biggest scene. We had 150 extras. They all needed to be fitted. They all needed to have their hair done. They all, you know, so I mean, it's like every department. We shot it over 3 days, almost 3 days over a weekend. So from the preparations to organizing, you know, all the dances, all the songs, to the whole dynamics within, you know, to the procedures, I mean, it was so complex in so many ways. So what we did is actually we kicked off the wedding So the whole wedding played out a couple of times. And Wolfgang is just, I keep saying he's a great dancer because he knew the rhythm of the scene and what he managed to pick up within one take. We were just sitting behind the play out and or video village, and I mean we couldn't believe what we were seeing. So so it was not really taken down into scenes, but it was much more let's get things going and let's shoot just to get the atmosphere right. And it was interesting because all the everybody on the crew and cast who had that background, you know, who had made that journey from a Hasidic community, like basically everybody said, "Wow, that's what it looks like behind the curtain." So either being a women or man, you know, they'd never seen, they'd been to weddings, but they never knew what was going on behind the curtain. So now they could like look behind the curtain, and they all said, "Wow, it's just like, yeah, that's it feels and looks like the weddings that I've been to, and now I get to see the other side as well." So I guess that was the biggest compliment for, you know, for all the hats that had been working so hard to create that moment.
And how many days was it? Like 3 days you shot the wedding?
2 days, 2.5 days, I think we shot. Yeah, it was super intense. Again, at a Palestinian wedding hall in Wedding, which is not the easiest of all neighborhoods in Berlin. So we had extra security and so forth. So it was kind of like it was a high density part of the shooting. Yeah, definitely high density part of the shooting. Yeah.
Amazing. It looks amazing though, and you feel like you're in this wedding. It's amazing. We're getting lots of good questions in, so I'm going to sort of pause my questions and go through some of these. A good one from Sylvia Nicolaides, who is just that, you know, you're making a film about religion. People are sensitive about their religion, other people's religions. You know, have there been controversies, and how did you deal with those?
Have there been big controversies? No, not as far as I know. Nothing that really, you know, boiled up and just created kind of like issues. I think that there's obviously, if you go online, and there's certain forums where people from the community, you know, exchange their views on the show. So obviously there's criticism, and especially on something like religion. You know, you'd never get everything right, and it's such an emotional subject. So you're obviously always going to push people's buttons in one way or the other. I think there's no way around it. But I can honestly say that, you know, from the depth of our heart, we made sure that, you know, we take into account, you know, what's at stake and what we're looking at and what we're telling. We're telling the story of one individual girl, you know, and it's not, we're, again, as much as we're not commenting on the community, we're not commenting on religion, you know. This is, who are we to judge in a way, you know. This is really, we've talked to a lot of people from the community, and obviously there's so many people, just that's where they belong. That's where they feel safe. That's where they feel, you know, I mean, it's again, this is just one very, very, very tiny fraction what we looked at, you know, and story to be told. And there's probably, that's why also the show connected to so many people worldwide. You know, there's been people with various backgrounds, be it from Argentina or be it from Taiwan or from Kuwait, or, I mean, it's crazy from where all the feedback came, and people connected, and they were certainly not, you know, ultra-Orthodox Jews, but they knew that story because they've been there, or they were on a similar path. And so that was really great to see that, like, you know, that the show managed to reach out and go beyond what it's actually talking about.
Great. Signe Zeilik Jensen, who you might know from the Netherlands. Hello, yes. Signe. She's curious about that making of documentary that we mentioned on Netflix. When did that come about? Was that a Netflix idea?
That was Anna's idea. Anna had done it on Deutschland. And she said, hey, why don't we, she had very, very good experience with it on Deutschland. And said, why don't we do it? And it was actually, it's a writer, Marlene, that she's been working with, which is Justine's, our costume designer's daughter, who who then made that documentary, which has been super successful as well along the lines of the show. You know, it's being offered to you if you finish the show, then you get to watch the making of, and it's a brilliant extensive piece that just then takes you deep inside. You know, the way it was we made it, and it was really it's. To me, it's much more than a making of, but maybe that's also because the way we did it was so particular. But yeah.
I was just cynical and assumed when it became a hit, Netflix was like, "Go back, give us more."
No.
Okay.
No. It was really, Anna was pushing for it because she knew from a past experience on Deutschland that this would be something that adds value.
Yeah.
And it does. It's so much more value.
Yeah.
You know. And so yeah. So that's how
I was disappointed that there's not enough about the producer in there. Come on, we needed
that's
in part
just
2 of the making of.
Never mind. I'm perfectly happy where I am.
You know, you've mentioned some of the feedback you got from all these places around the world, and we've got a question from let's see who it was coming from. Oh, they're actually anonymous questions about, you know, does Netflix, did they tell you where you did very well? Did they give you numbers? Was some of this just seeing social media chatter? How do you know?
Obviously they share certain data points with you. Not in every detail, but we knew what was going on. We knew how it developed. We knew how many freaking millions of people we reached within 4 weeks. Just like a crazy amount of people. Something that is really mind-boggling. So it's tens and tens and tens of millions of people basically watch the show and complete the show within the first 28 days. It is when we looked at the numbers, it was and Netflix, the marketing team, said many times before, and the algorithm is going to find the audience, and we were like, well, we don't know the algorithm, so we were very insecure, and you know, how's this gonna go? It's the 26th of March. Oh my God, our first show on Netflix. You know, we need to push. And they said the algorithm is gonna find the audience. We're like, yeah, but we don't know the algorithm. What do we know? Now we know the algorithm does find the audience. Yeah. It really does. I mean, yes, they know very well what they're doing. Yeah, they're super professional.
Yeah, but it's more than the algorithm, isn't it? Because people really come to this. I mean, it probably was pushed to me by Netflix, and I was like, I don't know. And within a few days, a lot of sort of people I really trust were like, Shiro House is amazing. You have to watch this. You know, it's not.
It was both. Yeah, it was both, and that's what they also told us, that they could see that, you know, it was basically, it was the best example how their algorithm works with word of mouth. And obviously that's where the whole Corona situation came in. I mean, it must be a great show. How people freaking love it so much. I love it as well, but obviously I don't have the distance, so I wouldn't say, hey, it's a great show. Yeah. But since so many people were at home and so many people were watching stuff, and then they needed new content, and that was really that was the time when, since more people tried it out and then loved it, and then the recommendations were obviously a lot more frequent in the last couple of months or weeks and months. So we gained more traction and momentum, I think, through that situation. I guess the show would have still been a success, but probably not as fast.
And can you see, you know, now that lockdowns are somewhat easing up in some places, I mean, everybody's very different. Are people still discovering it? Are people still watching it as much as they were when it first came out? Is it?
I don't know. I mean, we're not talking data points anymore. Okay. And the first 2 weeks, I spent so much time on Twitter that I'd never done before. I looked at my Twitter account and it said I opened it in 2009. Those 2 weeks after launch, I spent kind of like 6 times as much than the 11 years before. So I don't know. I haven't been on Twitter for a while, but that can probably give you a pretty good, you know, idea of how many people do do still discover it or just now watch it for the first time because they haven't gotten around it or something. I guess there's still some people, but obviously I think that's much lower than what it used to be. But who knows? I mean, now with the Emmy nominations, probably gave it a push again.
Yeah, you get a bump from the Emmys, maybe. And do you know if it's, I mean, I'd like to think it's, everybody can watch it, but do you know if young women were watching it or were older audiences?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the demographics really. But again, if you look at Twitter, I mean, there were British firefighters, you know, loving the show as much as I mean, it's really kind of like really astonishing. Kind of like you look at people's profiles, you're like, oh my God, all these people connect to what we've done. This is just so beautiful. Yeah, for whatever reason, they connected. So, but I guess obviously, I mean, I guess it's probably. Young women are probably the key demographic, but that's just my 2 cents. I don't have any data to back that up, but that would just be my assumption. Maybe that's also a little naive, but that's my guess.
Here's another naughty question from me. Netflix gets a show that they haven't had to throw huge amounts of money at. I mean, they financed it at a decent level, but not a huge budget. And then it becomes a hit. Do you get a bonus for being a hit? Do you get a case of champagne? What do you get? A thank you?
Oh yeah. Oh no, I got a lovely picnic basket, so I could take some time off and celebrate, you know, what we've done. No, for sure. I mean, they take care of you, but as to bumps and bonuses and such, I guess I know that, you know, it's something that producers in the US can negotiate. I guess that at least that's what you can read in the trades. Here in Germany, let's say not yet.
Okay.
But yeah, not yet. I don't think that we're that far. But
you did a flat deal with them at the beginning.
Yeah, flat deal, flat fee.
Yeah. Like that's how a broadcaster would work as well.
That's exactly how a broadcaster would work. Yeah, that's why it was that's why, you know, we knew kind of like the basic outset of you know what this partnership would entail. I mean, not the details, but
I'm not the only one wondering, could there be a sequel?
Nope.
What?
We decided sorry, I have to stop you right there.
Yeah.
We decided quite quickly that as these stories really told, the whole, what would there to be told? You know, what could you tell that would be really an added value to what you've seen in the show? You know, I think everything wouldn't be as magical. You know, being within that community, having access to that community was great for the first season. I think in a potential second season, people would probably not be as fascinated by it anymore. You know, so some of these things wear off. Others, there's no real. I mean, you want to tell her story in Berlin? It can't. I don't think that there's even. You know, you have to up the game for a second season, and it would feel artificial to do so. You know, we would have had to, you know, I don't know, do something crazy with it, but we didn't really, and especially Anna didn't really feel that, and so I think it's perfectly fine. You know, it's a beautiful show. It's gonna be what it is forever. And we can take that momentum and everything that we've learned from it and create something new. Yeah, there's not going to be, I know people want a sequel, but isn't that beautiful to end something where everybody wants more, and it's just, and it ends on something positive, you know? Than doing a second season, which would have so much difficulties to live up to the experience of the first season, you know? So no, it didn't feel right. There's nothing that really would jump at you and say like, yes, but this still needs to be told. Not really.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Thank you for having integrity, if you must.
Yeah.
we can rewatch these 4 episodes if we need to. We're getting a few more good questions. We're going to have to start winding down. So I wanted to ask a few of these questions coming in, because one of them, again, Vikas and I are on the same wavelength. Because I was going to ask, yeah, what did you learn as a producer working on this amazing show?
Oh, I learned a lot about, you know, the procedures and that Netflix puts to their productions. Kind of like really, that's really technical, you know. Obviously, there's always a gazillion things that you learn on a show, you know, or in a production. But here, specific, since it was my first time working with them, I took away a lot of the logic behind and a lot of the resources that they offered as to how things were done. You know, the systems, how to edit, and so forth. So I guess mostly those things that I would take away and that I could adapt and use further on, you know, just to.
Yeah, and a couple of other people have asked, you know, how do you think this is going to change your career? Do you know what you're working on next?
Oh yeah,
how do you measure up
I know
against
what I'm working.
Unorthodox? Yeah.
Yeah, I know what I'm certainly know what I'm working on next. We're going to production in 10 days.
Oh.
So and plus many things to come. Well, obviously it's a door opener. I guess that you know, we've, like, our company, our group, we've done Bad Banks, and now we've done Unorthodox. So I think we've definitely proven that we can produce you know, international shows or German shows with an international appeal, you know, with a big international appeal. Like, we can totally do this. Not that I ever doubted that before, but that's definitely something now on our track record that is just a sign of trust. I think I guess that people will find it much easier to trust us when we approach them with something that, you know, might be bigger to what we've done before, you know. So obviously I've really tasted blood in working with Netflix and having a global reach. Yeah. And I think that we can that there's many more stories coming out of Germany with an international appeal, you know. So that's what I'm thriving for now, and I know that the show and those nominations definitely they open doors. They definitely open doors. So I guess that's what it will make some things easier, but just some. Yeah. It just, you know, kind of like first steps are probably easier. Everything else is still as difficult as it always is, but kind of like the first step in some ways might be easier in approaching people and so forth. So, yeah.
And what is this show or film that you're shooting in 10 days? Can you tell us?
Yeah, sure. It's August 13th, 1961 marks the day that the wall was built in Germany. And so next year is going to be the 60th anniversary. And for that anniversary, I'm producing an event film, an event TV movie, as we call it. I don't really like as much event, but obviously it's a big budget period piece. But it's very special because we were thinking about what would be our narrative approach. You know, how would we tell a story on that day? And obviously you could take a young girl that's torn between a guy in the East and a guy in the West, you know, and she doesn't know, you know, which side to choose. That would be a very obvious kind of like setup that we didn't want to tell. I'm sure you can tell a great romantic comedy, but not interested in that. And so we were looking a long time for something else, and then we found a writer, Robert Krause, and he told us the story of his grandparents. And they boarded a train going from Bremen to East Berlin on the early morning of August 13th, 1961. They were East Germans alongside other East German passengers on the train. So at each stop, rumors mounted towards the certainty that all East German passengers on the train going to East Berlin were actually faced with the decision of their life, whether they're going to stay on board, go home, but might be never able to leave, or get off and might never see their home again. So I thought that was a we thought it was a very powerful narrative principle. And along that principle, we tell the story of people on a train. This time we're telling the story from Munich to East Berlin. And so it's an ensemble piece that looks at very personal stories about, you know, I don't know, dreams and hopes and secrets, and not necessarily linked to the whole political discourse around East and West, but just really personal choices, life-changing event. So 80% of it is being told on a train, which I really love. I really love it. Just the idea of, you know, telling a film story about the wall being built and 80% of it is set on a train. I really like that idea already, you know, as stupid as it sounds, but yeah, that's what we're doing right now. And then we've got another couple things going into production in next year as well.
And with this train, that's a feature film that's going to be for cinemas, or?
Yeah, no. It's gonna be in prime time. It's going to be like the emotional centerpiece for that day on ARD, the first public broadcaster. Yeah, premiering on prime time. So around about a year from now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once again, you're not leaving yourself much time.
No, not at all. But again, I'm working with Jeff. Jeff has been casted, and I'm working with the same hair and makeup, our brilliant hair and makeup artist Jens Bartram, who just did such a I mean, the work he did on Unorthodox that he didn't get nominated is really hard to comprehend.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I mean, those were all fake pies. Those were like all the like he did an amazing job. Yeah, but I'm working with him again on this film, so it's nice to kind of collaborate with some of the people from last year and work again. Yeah, it was a very great experience.
Yeah,
so it continues in some way. It continues.
Yes, in some ways it does. So, you know, encourage people, everybody listening who haven't seen Unorthodox, if there's anybody out there left, or you can rewatch it. Or, you know, I do recommend the making of documentary. It's also very interesting. And we wish you very good luck at the Emmys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And just being so open, even though you didn't tell us the budget. I'm going to remember. No, I'm just kidding. We understand why you're not at liberty to discuss certain things, but I think you were open about your process of making this amazing show. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience. We've had a large audience here on a Sunday, coming up with some great questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to quite all of them. And just to mention, this will be archived on some of Screen Daily's channels on YouTube, I think, and maybe on screendaily.com, and a little recap of this. And there's thank you to Sarajevo CineLink for putting this together. There's 2 other great panels happening today. In a half hour, you can listen to the masterclass with Michelle Hazanavicius. And at 7 p.m. Central Time, there is the panel about platforms and broadcasters, can they work together? Which, gosh, that sounds very topical. So those all sound really interesting. Thanks again for everybody for joining us, but especially to Henning. And next time, Henning, we're going to make you do the ukulele concert next time. We'll make time.
Everybody can be glad that this is over so they don't hear me play. But thank you very much, Wendy, for doing this. Thanks for everybody tuning in.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.